How wonderful it is to greet you on this day and to bring this message. This month, we have been talking about play and being in play. And let's just go to our theme for the year first is living everyday wonder. Uh, it's it's amazing to think that we're already uh, at the midway point of March and that we've been living everyday wonder, or at least learning, or at least being instructed and getting these amazing ideas of how to live in everyday wonder. For me, I live in wonder often, but that's a whole nother talk. And we're gonna get to ours today. We've been talking about play today, and the whole month we've been talking about play. And this day we're gonna be talking about the divine joy of rest, or as many people say, I'll rest when I'm dead. You know, how many times have we heard people say, I'll rest when I am dead? Well, because so many people say, I'll rest when I'm dead, Thich Nhat Hanh says this: we humans have lost the wisdom of genuinely resting and relaxing. We worry too much. We don't allow our bodies to heal, and we don't allow our minds and hearts to heal. How many of us can absolutely relate with that? Now, I know in this particular spiritual community, we have lots of folks that are retired, folks that are working, folks that are in school, folks that are doing all kinds of things. And so this message applies to each and every one of you. Wherever it is that you find yourself on that spectrum, I see some smiling faces on Zoom right now. You are eligible too. You know, that saying of I'll rest when I'm dead um, has a lot to do with fear. Oops, did I say that? Yeah, it has a lot to do with fear. Now, here's the idea behind this all, and I'm gonna trust that you're gonna go with me here and that you're gonna roll with me on this, and that is, it's based in fear because our life is eternal. Oops. Right? Because our life is eternal. Our life is eternal. Yes, that absolute life that I am is eternal. And yes, you might say, yeah, sunshine, I totally get it. I believe it. I'm with you on life is eternal. And we only have but so long in these physical bodies. So, you know what I'm saying? Yes, it's this and that. Now, here's the idea. The idea that even Thich Nhat Hanh said that we don't really grasp the idea and the fullness of rest and relaxation speaks to the amount of trust that we've actually put into the world of effects, the amount of trust that we put into employers, the amount of trust that we put in society compared to the amount of trust that we put in spirit, right? In that source, in that I am presence. And it's the subtleties that really have us doing that. Oh, yes, absolutely. Those things that we overlook. Now, here's the deal is that for many of us who are retired, and I'm not one of those. I actually, I get to run this spiritual community and I love it. But many folks are like, oh, you know what, sunshine, I did my time. I know my mom lives in a wonderful retirement community in Florida, but you know what? Like, How is it that folks fool themselves and trick themselves into constantly being busy? And even during COVID, like during COVID and the lockdowns, when we were actually locked down, because we're still experiencing the effects of COVID. But even during the lockdown, people were pulling their hair out because they didn't know they needed to stay busy. It was like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to be doing now? And not resting. And so as a result of not even resting physically, they were not even resting mentally. I know in my conversations with my mom, I love it because, I imagine, living in a retirement community and probably like golfing or, just kind of relaxing and taking it easy. No, my mom is all in the chisme, right? All in the gossip, all in the like, who's sitting with who at the dining hall and what dynamics. And it's like, hello, it's like, mom, rest, rest. That we find ourselves even in our golden years, still trying to um, uh, uh, be in the mix of things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong because, of course, we tell ourselves that being busy and being, and for those people who work, right? Oh, I put in 80 hours this week and it makes me feel alive and da 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 da. And it all comes from fear of missing out. There's this lack and limitation. There, idea and consciousness when we're so busy and we do not allow ourselves to rest. I think of a baby in my arms, wide awake, but just totally leaning on my shoulder. I think about that infant there resting. That's the image that I get of rest. That infant has total trust. That infant lacks nothing. That infant is wide awake, but totally leaning, looking around, just feeling supported and loved. And I wonder if some of us run from rest because we're afraid that we're not supported and or loved. I know the feeling of loneliness. I've experienced the pain of believing that I am unloved or not lovable. I know the despair of mistrust. And it's no joke. And yet, the courage that it takes to dwell in that place, even just to swim in it, to then recognize it for the lie that it is, takes courage. Because what I remind us of every time that I speak is that you are the unique and unrepeatable, magnificent way that spirit shows up in human form. So it is an impossibility for you to be unloved, unlovable. It is an impossibility to experience mistrust when you are that unique, unrepeatable, magnificent, powerful, perfect way that spirit shows up. And if we would only pause long enough and rest long enough to recognize the lies for what they are, we could indeed live our amazing, genuine, authentic, rich, powerful lives. But we've been caught up in the world of effects. We've been caught up into believing that if I'm busy, I must be important. If I got places to go and people to see and things to do, you might want to be hanging out with me because I'm it. And yet, when folks don't rest, we find that it is the cause of all sorts of grief, all sorts of strife, all sorts of dis-ease, disease. It all comes from a lack of rest. And so today, the idea of rest is really that idea of trusting spirit, trusting infinite spirit rather than trusting our finite self. It's this idea of quieting down all the racing thoughts, like in our meditation by Gary Takasian today. And even just observing those thoughts and not attaching to those thoughts. You know, it's written, come to me, all thee who are weary and heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. Rest doesn't come in the great by and by, even though we use it as a slogan, I'll rest when I'm dead because I'm busy like partying and using my life and all of that. Or we think that, you know, once we leave this physical body that we're going to be in rest. Rest is actually this profound peace that is granted to us when we seek to rest in spirit. Let me repeat that. Rest is actually a profound peace that is granted to those who seek this peace, who seek rest in spirit. In other words, when you look for it, you get it. When you are seeking rest, you will get rest. The question is are you seeking it? You know, what studies are showing is that working people do not take their full paid vacations. And when they do take their vacation, because we have these wonderful little instruments called cellular devices, they're never really on vacation, because if an employee or a coworker or a peer or the boss or the subordinates, whoever it is, has a question, they can reach you on your handy dandy phone and interrupt. You're laying out on the beautiful beaches of whatever island or place you choose to be. What studies are also showing is that more and more, because of our pandemic, that folks returning to work are now actually requesting and demanding and taking their paid time off. They're taking those 15 minutes, those two 15-minute breaks that are so important in the middle of the day. One in the morning after several hours, a lunch break, and then an afternoon break. That for our mental health, for our spiritual health, for our physical health, for our emotional health, We must rest. Now, here's a question that I love asking folks because it's kind of a trick question, but it isn't so tricky after all. When does your heart rest? Immediately, folks will say, it never does. It never rests. Your heart is constantly going, bump, 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 bump. But what I will share with you is that if we take the lead from nature, from our very heart, our heart rests in between beats. It beats and there's the rest. It beats and there's the rest. It is regularly resting. It rests, if you will, in between the beats. It has to rest. We must rest. What what Brene Brown says, it takes courage to say yes to rest and play in a culture where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. We have been talking about play. We've been talking about play, and now we're talking about rest and the importance of this balance in our lives. Now, the reason Brene Brown says that it takes courage is because courage is looking and feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's different and slightly different than bravery. Bravery is having no fear. Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And so it takes courage to go, wow, I don't know what I'm going to find when I rest. I may find some aspects about myself that I don't like. I may find some things that are just uneasy. But it is only there that we're going to find that profound peace, when we're able to dismiss, where we're able to shine the light upon the lies that we've been believing about rest. I know for many people of color living in a white America, for many people of color, to rest means to appear lazy. And many people of color, oh, look it, they're lazy. Instead of going out there and hustling and just because someone else is busy working and putting in 80 hours a week doesn't mean that it's healthy. Doesn't mean that we've had great examples. But I know for me, coming up in my biracial culture, I remember my grandmother saying, we can't rest because we're going to look like we don't appreciate what the US is giving us. We don't appreciate, or that we're lazy. Those messages must be dismissed into the nothingness from which they came. And even if you're a white-bodied person in the USA, those messages have to be dismissed as well. Rest and play are equally as important as work. We can no longer continue to abuse this body temple that we've been given. And so wherever it is that we've gotten the messages that we've gotten about rest and play and work, the invitation is to take those messages into your prayer, into your meditation work, and to simply ask that indwelling spirit, that indwelling I am power and presence within you, to reveal to you in your language, in a language that you understand, What is the highest and the best formula, the highest and the best ratio of work, of play, of rest? Because it is different for each and every person, in particular, different for each and every one of us, depending on our stage of evolution, in our stage of life right now. I mean, you know, young people, we say, have a lot of energy, but I've seen a lot of my seniors with a lot of energy as well, right? Heading over to the Y, swimming, doing yoga, doing their thing, living their best life. And of course, the rest is important. How many of us do not take that mental break and rest because we're constantly thinking and trying to solve situations, or always being in the Kool-Aid and, trying to figure things out? When we rest in spirit, we're simply we're taking everything, go, okay, spirit, you said to come here, to come to the altar of my heart, to come to this indwelling place, to bring all my heavy burdens, to bring my weariness. I can't figure this out. So here, I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to rest. And while I rest, thank you in advance for the solution. I dare you to try that. So many of us are so mentally weary and heavily burdened because we're trying to figure out stuff all the time. Oh, I hear it all the time. I even say it. I can't figure this out, or I'm trying to figure this out here. And it's like, why am I trying to do all the work? You know what? Part of my team is a power and a presence and an infinite intelligence that is the solution to all of my daily living problems. Why am I trying to figure it out? What I get to do is rest. And sometimes that rest begins through my spiritual practice, right? Through my prayer work, through my meditation, through my getting out of self and simply being in service and of service and contributing to others. Sometimes my rest comes from being reminded, reading scripture or inspirational books, the Science of Mind book, reading something inspirational where I'm reminded that I can release that wrinkle from between my eyebrows from thinking so hard all the daggone time, that I can rest. Sometimes that rest looks like receiving and calling for body work, going for a walk, sitting at the beach with our dogs. Sometimes that rest is simply just sitting in a chair and allowing that peace that passes all human understanding, that profound peace, to simply take over my body. Beloveds, I say to you today that peace and that stillness and that opportunity to rest is imperative. Thich Nhat Hanh says it is very important that you relearn the art of resting and relaxing. Not only does it prevent the onset of many illnesses that develop through chronic tension and worry, it allows you to clear your mind, to focus, and find creative solutions to problems. What I want to share with you lastly is to be cautious and beware of the idea that I am going to rest so that I can be more productive. Oh yeah, time to rest. I need my rest because I got a big day ahead of me tomorrow. I need to be more productive. Instead, rest for the sake of resting. Play for the sake of playing. And work for the sense of working, that it is imperative for each of us to find the balance, to find that balance, and to know that that balance is indeed what is most important. And so I'm going to leave us with this affirmation for this week, that when you are weary, when you are heavy burdened, when you're like, WTF, why the face? Why the fight? Why the frustration? That you're reminded of this simple affirmation for today, and that you not only affirm it, but that you take action upon it. I rest in divine joy. I rest in divine joy. I promise you that as you begin to have a different relationship with rest, that divine joy is just going to keep peeking its head and poking its head like, I'm here, I'm here. And that as you begin to trust that indwelling power and presence, that you too can be like the image of that little baby that I told you about. Imagine that that is you, simply resting in spirit, resting, fully trusting, fully just enjoying the nothingness that gets to happen in that moment, that sense of profound peace, that sense of profound and divine joy that we find when we truly surrender to the rest that is absolutely for us, for our benefit, and for our highest good. It is so. And now that is. And now it is. So let me take a moment to just lead us in a word of blessing for this day. And that word of blessing starts with recognizing the one power, one presence, one life that I call spirit, that I call life itself, that power and presence that is love, that is joy, that is peace, that is rest, that is balance, that is divine order and beauty and creativity. I know its qualities as all of the words that I have mentioned, and I simply know it profoundly as my life. My life is life itself. My life is the life of spirit. With all the power, with all the presence, with all the infinite intelligence that spirit is, it is available to me, as me, in me, even now. And so as I speak this word in recognition of the one power, one presence, one life, I know that this life has created everything out of itself. Therefore, all is the unique, unrepeatable, magnificent, powerful way that spirit shows up, not only in human form, but as all life. And so it is with that honor, with that dignity, with that respect, with that sacred knowing that I simply speak the word now for and about all life. Knowing and recognizing peace on the planet, that everyone laid down their weapons of mass destruction and mass distraction, that everyone lays down their war articles, and that they be beaten into plowshares, that we might reap love, that we might reap peace, that we might reap joy, that we might reap happiness and creativity as a global society. Right now, I'm simply calling forth any idea within our bodies, individually and collectively, that is unlike peace, that it now evacuates the body, and that only peace occupies the body, occupies the mind, occupies our conversation, that we simply call it forth in our life as our expression, and we simply call it forth in the world, that we're calling forth peace and love and oneness. That we recognize humanity as being the divine humanity, as recognize it as being the unique and unrepeatable way that life shows up in human form, that all life is the life of God. And that as I recognize this for myself, even here, sitting right where I sit, that I simply call it forth as the recognition and the awakening for all of humanity. And so we're not disregarding or not paying attention to what's happening in the world. We know what's happening in the world, and we know what's happening in our own world. And we're simply calling forth that our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And so we're simply clearing up and evacuating and evicting ideas of hatred, ideas of otherness, ideas of illness, ideas of lack and limitations, ideas of fear. And we're simply resting in spirit, calling forth and saying, Spirit, handle this. Transform me, transform humanity, transform our minds, our thinking, our lives, that we might recognize that all life is the life of God. And so as we play, as we work, as we rest in spirit. We engage a little more actively in our spiritual practices that we might be reminded of this truth. That balance is absolutely necessary, that rest is absolutely necessary, that play is absolutely necessary, that work is also necessary, and that there is balance in our life. And just like the ebb and the flow of the ocean, the wave coming upon the shore, just like our heart beats and rests, beats and rests, beats and rests, just like I inhale and exhale, I'm so grateful for the reciprocal nature of life, knowing that as I speak this word, that it comes back to me fulfilled. So I rest in spirit, knowing that my word returns to me filled full, fulfilled, and running over. And because I pray believing it is done, I'm knowing that this spiritual community and all spiritual communities are indeed blessed. It is so right now in the mind of God. Therefore, I look for all the ways that it is made manifest in our human experience. It is so now, and so it is, and so we let it be, and we rejoice in that. And so